I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is Mr. Tim Cole, who is joining us as a Vistage chair from the Denver metro area. Always proud to represent my Denver and Colorado chairs. Tim, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Chairwaves.
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure. Appreciate it.
You're darn right. It's a pleasure. So let's get started and dig in. Obviously, people weren't born Vistage chairs. Typically, being a Vistage chair is a second or third career for folks. Where did you come from? What's your background pre-Vistage?
Yeah, so I wish I knew of Vistage when I was in my leadership roles and in my traditional work life prior to Vistage. So I'm fairly new to Vistage over the last couple of years, and so my career was a combination of technology and communications and retail. Um, IBM is where I started, have that foundation in technology. It's always been a part of what I've done. And then since then, I ran a subsidiary for Hallmark cards, which was high end stationery and wedding invitations. And I had a dinnerware manufacturing business that I started on my own and sold through fine gift stores around the country. And then I was part of a communications organization where we navigated and managed all the communications for health plans and banks and organizations like that. And so, but the common thread was always customer focus, operations focus, and how to make those products, regardless of the industry, really compelling in a recurring kind of manner with customers.
Yeah, you mentioned IBM, and IBM is, I mean, that's about as corporate a workplace as you can get. Was that your first real job out of school?
It was, and I remember when I was in college and walking with my dad near where he was working in downtown Pittsburgh, where I grew up, and I looked in an office and I saw all these people with white shirts on and dark suits, and I asked him, "What's that all about?" He said, "Oh, that's IBM." And I'm like, I would never want to work there. My goodness. But lo and behold, that's where I landed. And it was a wonderful half dozen years and just great foundation and experience.
What did IBM, as a young professional, what did you learn there?
Well, camaraderie was one of the things that was interesting because of the size of the organization and the work that they put into allowing those of us that were new to the organization feel like we weren't alone. And the training was terrific. And so I think it was the foundational business and technology training that was just remarkable, but also keeping us in environments where we had peers and mentors to help guide us and affect our well-being and success.
And then to what made you, and certainly very few of us stay in our first job forever and ever. Um, but it would have, what's interesting about your story is that you didn't go from IBM and take a role in another. You didn't go to Hewlett Packard. You didn't go to Accenture. The jump from IBM to big tech or consulting would have been very, very natural. But instead, you kind of made a left turn and you ended up in the stationery business. how did that happen, and what did you learn there?
Yeah, so even before stationery, the reason I left IBM was because I just could see the number of years before I felt like I would be in a position to really make a difference, and so I kind of kept my tentacles out for leadership opportunities and opportunities where I could make more of a difference. And so even before the running a subsidiary of Hallmark, at 27, I was asked to run a very low tech temporary placement office. And we had two offices at the time. We expanded to four. And that was my first management role. And I was president of that organization and was so naive, but learned through a lot of hard knocks and a lot of trial and error, and had a wonderful handful of years there before I went to that what ultimately was a subsidiary of Hallmark Cards.
What was the Hallmark experience like for you?
So before the company was sold to Hallmark, and at that point in time, they asked me to stay on and run it. It was the founder and his wife. He had been at the Talbots when it was a small business. It went from 6 to 100 million over on his watch, and that. But he was then looking for an opportunity to kind of sow his entrepreneurial oats, and so that's what. So I joined Bill and his wife June, and the company was called William Arthur, and it was just he was. I learned so much from him. He was tough to work for. He was a really tough leader, really dogmatic in his expectations, but boy, he was generally right, and really. And I think what was notable about that, ultimately about 10 years, six of which was Bill was there, and then he sold it to Hallmark, and then I ran it for 4 years. Um, we never had a salesperson, and we went from 2 to 26 million, and it was all based on incredible operational and day-to-day excellence. And it was just a real foundation of how it's just an opportunity, I think, for all businesses to, of course, most businesses do need salespeople, but if the operational strength is there, that will be far more important and just a meaningful means of growth.
Well, that's I mean, that's an incredible lesson to learn. And yes, some of us need salespeople, but I imagine that having that pedigree of um, doing the 6 million to 100 million growth thing for that executive, I'm sure that if you that when you do that, you leave that with a certain level of confidence in yourself
Mm.
that that probably makes an impact on whatever you do next.
I would agree. I really do. I think that I'm a visual learner, and to literally be immersed in what it was that we did to inspire a loyal following from customers and how that word spread. And, most of the industries that we're part of are really relatively small when it comes down to the niche that most businesses are part of. And those in that and there's a powerful grapevine that exists within those industries. Um, and boy, no better way to perpetuate the kind of word of mouth that you want than to be really excellent at what you do. And it's not that's a guiding force that is not easy to execute, but really you can create a culture around it, and a not only a customer following, but an employee following with pride and so on. So it's just it was such a gift to be able to experience that firsthand.
So at what point did you get your own entrepreneurial bug?
Well, when it was really a clash of that entrepreneurial spirit that was part of William Arthur butting up against the very effective corporate environment of Hallmark. And so I kept wanting to manage top line opportunity, and they kept wanting to manage bottom line controls. And we were highly profitable, but they could see more opportunity on that side of the equation. So it was the right decision. They wanted their own person to run it, and when they came and informed me of that, I'm like, I think I want to bet on myself now.
So tell me uh how you went from that business to your the next stop in your journey.
Yeah, so I decided from scratch to start a dinnerware manufacturing business. At the time, we were in Maine, raising our daughters there, and it was a remarkable journey, going from literally learning how to work with clay, having to pay attention to the periodic table, which I studiously ignored during my schooling days, to figure out the right chemistry and engineering that was required to get the qualities that I wanted of microwave safe and dishwasher safe and strong and durable, yet elegant and beautiful for everyday use. And so found the right ceramic engineers that participated in my journey, and got it into about 75 stores around the country that carried the line, and yet about 4 years into that journey, most of U.S. manufacturing was moving offshore. And my oldest was about 13, and I'm like, boy, if I remortgage the house yet again, I'll never help with college. And so I moved on from that business, but it was the most satisfying work I've ever done.
The how in the world did you decide on dinnerware? Where did that come from? Because you didn't say, "Oh, well, I've been working as an executive in these companies. I want to start a consultancy, or I want to, or I just came from the paper business. I want to keep doing that." Where did dinnerware come from?
Well, and it was interesting. First of all, my wife Debbie and I really were committed to raising our daughters with continuity, and giving them that continuity of the same schooling over their schooling years. And so one of the large competitors of William Arthur asked me to come and join them, and run their organization, and they were arguably the number one in the industry. And I was flattered, but I didn't want to move, and I didn't want to compete with what I've been building for 10 years. And so it was very deliberate to change course, but high-end stationery was sold in either great stationery stores or really great gift stores. And so I felt like I understood that market, and so that's where I was bold enough to give that a go. I think again, I learned a lot. I There was a design element, that I was really a component of that success that I missed. So briefly, I think you generally need about 3 reasons to part with money to buy a product, right? And so an Apple's an easy example. It's not. It's way more than a phone. It has status. It has
Hmm.
utility. So there are more than 3 reasons to buy there. And I didn't have the design element in the dinnerware. The pure design was great, but I needed to be able to fire at very high temperature the ability to put really fine art on this dinnerware, so it would be a gift that would be giving personality from the giver to the receiver. And that technology and that learning came too late in the process. But anyway, again, great lesson to learn, and just lessons that have come into my work today as a chair, to take all those mistakes and help others avoid them, or to at least recognize them earlier in the process than I did.
And how did you exit that business?
I literally I had 2 people that were gonna buy the designs, and ultimately they both decided not to, but I was committed to moving on. So I still have the designs. Someday, maybe those will be will be sold. But I literally, that was the toughest decision from a business standpoint, to just say I'm done. And then I went back, and I just was needed to save money for the kids to go to college.
Uh, uh, that how did that how did that feel when you were sitting with that and having to make this decision to walk away from something that I believe you said was the most satisfying work that you'd done in your career at that point.
Yeah.
Um, Walking away from all of the various sunk costs and opportunity costs that had gone into all of that work. How did you process that?
It was very humbling, and it was, but I think that Debbie and I have been really consistent with what gets us excited and what our priorities are, and um, so I think there was just this realization that that next juncture of what needed to be introduced into the manufacturing process and the technology related to that in order to start to turn the dinnerware into giftware that had personality associated with it. That concept is simple, but the execution is relatively sophisticated. And I even went to some of the biggest manufacturers in the country and got them to agree to make prototypes, but their quality just wasn't going to make it saleable in the environment that I was targeting. And so it was the right decision, and that's been fortified over time. And at the time, there were enough other family and personal reasons that helped me through it. But ultimately, really humbling, and I have such an appreciation for what owners go through and what leaders go through. You make the best decision you can at the time, and those sunk costs and that opportunity cost. Yes, that's part of it, but you have to kind of like make a new decision with new information, and time is a real important component of that. And I thought that money was the biggest challenge in an entrepreneurial setting, but I would argue that time is.
I think that's a very wise observation. So, what led you to Vistage? How did you end up being part of that community?
So our when our daughters when it came time for them to go to college, I said you could go anywhere but in Maine. And I wanted them to see other parts of the country and just broaden their scope. And so they both ended up going to college in Colorado. And then they stayed and started with young families. And so during COVID, my wife and I said, this is a little bit crazy. Let's follow them. And so happily came to Colorado, and still have our home in Maine, which we rent. It's on a small lake, and but we're supporting them as they're raising their kids. And I started at first, I wasn't sure about Vistage. I knew I didn't want to commute. I was working remotely with the business in Maine that I'd been part of, and I knew I didn't want to continue that long commute on a once a quarter basis. So I started to network, looking for leadership roles in the greater Denver area, and I met a handful of Vistage chairs. And before long, I'm like, hold it, this might be the calling, and so that's really how it all started.
Very cool. What's been and you are a relatively new chair. You launched your first group when?
In March.
So you did Chair Academy, and now you're about 6 months in on having launched your first group. What's the journey been like for you? Um what's the what have you learned, and how have you grown as you've gone on this part of the journey?
It's been just immensely rewarding. I would have I wonder why I didn't start this journey 5 years ago or more, now that I know it, but I didn't know it before. So it's really like two jobs almost. There's sharing itself, which is just a beautiful, beautiful endeavor and wonderfully challenging, and just a forum for creating deep, meaningful conversations and to help leaders um, just be better at what it is that they do, and to just to really change their lives, and the impact that they have on themselves and the people that are counting on them. And so that part of it is just like I just can't say enough about how positive it is for me, and what and I take those lessons from William Arthur, and making sure that operational excellence is a part of everything that I do and that our group does. And I just take that so personally. But that's my responsibility to make sure that every moment we're together is of value, of significant value. Um, and so yeah, it's been great. The other part of the role, which is recruiting, is an incredible challenge as well. And I'm familiar enough with it that I understand the mechanics and the effort part of it. But to reach out to people that you don't necessarily know, and to respectfully look to get their attention, again, is a beautiful, wonderful challenge, but it's hard work. It's really hard work, and yet I think, like anything in life, it just makes the whole process more rewarding. But yeah.
What was the biggest thing that you took away from the process of doing that? Because the first 6 months after you're done with Chair Academy is basically not sharing, but it's essentially all recruiting. What did that part of the process teach you about yourself? And obviously you were you were successful. You came out the other side of it. A lot of folks don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll put family in the middle of that, right? I mean, this was so important to what I and we wanted to accomplish as a couple and for our family, and so there was a real drive and determination to overcome those hurdles. And I remember vividly, there are expectations of kind of where you are at certain junctures in the process and the tenure, and I was to have three committed attendees for a special event by a certain date, and on the Monday of that week, I had zero. And and I remembered but I still had confidence in the process that I was going through, and I had no way of knowing how the week would unfold. But I also remember just thinking about how important it was for me to prove to myself and to prove to my daughters, really, the just to overcome those hurdles, and to I didn't want to disappoint myself, and I certainly didn't want to. I just wanted to realize that that opportunity to get over the hump. And sure enough, at the end of that week, we had three commits for that meeting, and things. I mean, it's still there's so many times. People are people, and you think they may decide to join, and there are even some people that I decided weren't the right fit after going through those
Right.
discussions. But it's all worked out in a really nice way.
So you're 6 months into running your meetings.
Yeah.
Um, what's the biggest lesson that you've actually learned from one of your members? What have they taught you?
Um, I think I've always felt like I was a good listener, but there's a level of listening that is far beyond what I would have initially described. I think there's also a really important shift to go from problem solver to question asking, and
Yeah.
and how to orchestrate that in a way that's effective. And so, so, and I guess there isn't one particular lesson, although what I have learned is that, um, I think the common thread of the membership that I've assembled is, you're going through transitions in their life, important junctures in their life, and that can be, I've got the youngest member is 31, the oldest is in their 60s, um, and the oldest is getting ready to, looking for ways to preserve the legacy of the business that he's built as his leadership team kind of takes on that continuation of the business. And the youngest is so incredibly creative, and then everything in between in terms of. So I think that there's no profile other than real determination to learn and grow and be humble, yet really deep and determined. And when you get a bunch of people together with that kind of expectation, it's amazing what they do to challenge and uplift each other. And so I think it's more of a group phenomena than an individual.
Well, Tim, it's been wonderful chatting with you and getting to know you. If folks want to get in touch with you, if they're interested in meeting a Vistage chair, if they're thinking about Vistage, if they have questions about the chemistry of dinnerware, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Tim.Cole, tim.cole @vistagechair.com.
Very cool. Thank you for being a great guest.
Thank you, Eric. Really appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.